Hey everybody, welcome back to Vegas Weekly for Saturday, December the 4th, 2021. We're just 3 weeks out from our big Christmas No, we're not. There's not going to be a big Christmas spectacular. I don't think we're going to do a show at all on Christmas. So maybe we'll have a little Christmas greeting. We'll send that out to the members of the channel. That'll be like a special prize for them. 30 seconds of me wishing them Merry Christmas. But hey, if you are new to our channel, please consider hitting that subscribe button because there's no better gift this holiday season for a YouTube creator than your subscription, and it costs you nothing. However, if you'd like to be a member of our channel, you can click that join button for just $4.99 a month. You get a number of special perks. Actually, you pretty much get to watch this video early. That's the big perk, but certainly appreciate our members and all of our subscribers, and look forward to welcoming even more of you in the year to come. Speaking of the end of the year, we will do probably a bigger, longer show on New Year's Eve, kind of a retrospective on 2021, some of our favorite moments and some of our thoughts on the year to come. Also, December 15th is coming up. That's a week from this Wednesday. That'll be our December live stream. And we're going to look back also on 2021 with kind of a focus on some of our favorite vlogging moments. Not my own, but those of friends and fellow YouTubers out there. So that should be fun. Maybe we'll even do some kind of giveaway. I don't know. I'm not promising anything yet. We'll let you know later on. This is a special episode this week. So our strip walk series is suspended for 1 week. We will be back and doing that, finishing that up on the 11th and the 18th of December. We only have like 4 more casinos to walk through, so we'll be able to wrap that up before the end of the year as well and start with some new material going into 2022. Speaking of new material in 2022, although I don't know, I guess there is actually some new material. One of the biggest pop stars in the world, Adele, will be gracing the stage at Caesars Palace Coliseum starting, I think, January 21st for at least initially a 3-month engagement. Tickets are through the roof and difficult to get. So if you are rich, well-connected, and really love Adele, you might want to check her out. She'll be there basically on the weekends through the middle of April. Something to that effect. So there's not a lot of shows, at least not initially. I would suspect if this is very successful, it could get pushed forward. The other news this week wasn't really so much news. It was some speculation that was kind of all over the Twitterverse, because that's where you get all the most reliable information is on Twitter. But one thing that popped up repeatedly was the idea that the Oakland A's are in fact going to move to Las Vegas, following their friends, the Oakland Raiders. There's been speculation about this for a good year or more. I know we've talked about it on the show. This week we heard that the A's were going to buy the Tropicana Hotel and the land on which it exists, and that's where they were going to build a stadium. Right there on the Las Vegas Strip. I saw mock-ups that included the hotel still being there right next to it, but most of the speculation that I saw involved the old Tropicana being bulldozed and replaced with parking or other amenities that relate to the stadium. Interesting. I don't know. I am skeptical of these reports because there's, you know, as I said, a lot of these are trial balloons. Someone throws an idea out there. Sometimes it's not even the people who need to do the idea. Somebody that thought it'd be a great idea to do this. I don't know. Bally's just bought or is in the process of buying Tropicana. Presumably they bought it because they wanted a presence on the Las Vegas Strip. Speculation, as we've mentioned here, that they might actually acquire the brand name Bally's and re-theme or repurpose that property somewhat. I don't know. So I can't think they're in a huge hurry to sell it since they just obtained it. But I guess if the price was right, are the A's that wealthy? In which case, why, if they have that kind of money, why do they even need a new stadium? I don't know. The A's have been, I think, using Las Vegas for the last several years as a bargaining chip to try to get more locally. I don't know. We shall see. And then there was a speculation once again that supposedly MGM is looking to demolish the Luxor and Excalibur. Again, that seemed like kind of a lot to swallow. Heck, they can't. They're not going to do that. They're not going to get rid of the pyramid. Well, I don't know. It apparently has some structural issues, which I assume they've been shoring up over the past few decades. And perhaps there comes a point at which they cannot any longer safely keep the thing up. Of course, it's also could very much be part of a de-theming, which MGM has done pretty much everywhere that it could. And, you know, but again, as people say, there's only so much you can de-theme about a property that features a giant pyramid. And there's only so much you can do about de-theming a property that is basically in the shape of a giant medieval castle. But it seems like a lot of room inventory to rid oneself of. You know, around 8,000-9,000 rooms, I think, between the two properties. It's a lot of room inventory to get rid of, if you will. I don't know. So, who knows? I don't think that's going to happen anytime soon. Will it happen in the next few years? Maybe. And what that sort of speculation got me to thinking about is, you know, here we are sitting on the verge of 2022. You know, we've had some exciting things pop up in Vegas in the last few years. Finally, a new resort, a new downtown property. We've had both the Allegiant Stadium and T-Mobile Arena built and filled with major league sports. So we have seen some things happen in recent years. But I wanted to try to look back on history and try to put things in perspective and then try to look ahead. Where is Vegas going to be when we enter the year 2032? When I do this show in 10 years, oh my God, am I going to do this show for 10 more years? I don't know. I don't know if I'm going to do this show for 10 more years. But if I do this show in 10 years, what am I going to be talking about 10 years from now? Looking back at Vegas history and looking back at the properties that we have now on the Strip, one thing, there's not a lot of room on the Las Vegas Strip for new stuff. If you start looking at it, we have seen some proposals for some new hotels further south on Las Vegas Boulevard. One, I think, relatively close to Mandalay Bay. The other one all the way down to the Las Vegas sign. I don't believe either of those properties have begun any kind of construction, so they're still in the maybe phase. If you sort of make your way down the Strip, as we've been doing the last few weeks, you know, you do have a pretty good size area there between Planet Hollywood and MGM Grand, where the Hawaiian Marketplace is. Clearly there's room there for a resort of some sort. There's that big vacant lot that used to be the New Frontier. Was a few years ago was going to be a new Wynn Hotel resort. There's that. Obviously, you've got Resorts World has a lot more space to expand into if it's successful, and apparently it's not so successful. Fontainebleau, I'm told it's going to happen. So we'll see a lot of construction there over the next couple of years if that is the case. And certainly in 10 years, you would think there would be a big burgeoning Fontainebleau, very close to the convention center, connected to all these other properties, as we remember, by the giant underground boring companies' little cars that drive you around. 10 years, probably happen. 10 years, it probably won't be a monorail. That will have extended past its use and will have been demolished. A memory. You know, there's always that lot right across from Sahara that never becomes anything. It could be. But, you know, with maybe one or two exceptions, these are not prime pieces of real estate. And, you know, we haven't had much happen on the Las Vegas Strip lately. If you look at the history of the Strip all the way back to the 40s, you had kind of a golden age of hotels that happened after the opening of the Flamingo in the mid-40s. You had all of these new properties come up these sort of famous names, most of them no longer in existence. Sahara is still around in some form, but, the sands, the dunes, the old Aladdin, I guess, the Tropicana, the Riviera. I know I'm probably forgetting somebody, but all of these older properties that have come and gone, and in most cases have been replaced by something bigger and better. But then you kind of had a gap. The 60s were kind of a slow time in Las Vegas as far as anything new happening. You did have properties like Aladdin opened up in the 60s. You had two major properties that opened up that we still see to this day, Caesar's Palace and Circus Circus. Are they immune to anything ever happening? I mean, Circus Circus has been a candidate to get knocked over for years. There used to be a website called the Casino Death Watch. It's probably still there. I don't know. Most of the hotels on that Death Watch have already died. I know the Riviera, the Stardust, those kinds of places used to be on it. They've been gone for a while. Westward Ho. A lot of names, a lot of memories there as well. The New Frontier, which at some level had been around since the early 40s. All gone. And, I started to think a little bit about how long some of those properties had been on the Las Vegas Strip. So let's take a look. Because I went and looked at when they got imploded, how long they were around. The Dunes opened up in 1955. It was basically knocked over in 93. It lived 38 years. The Landmark, just a little bit off the Strip, was completed, I think, originally in 63, though there were some construction issues and some health and safety issues there. Knocked over in 95, 32 years old. The Sands made it all the way from 1952 to 1996 with a lot of renovations, much as we saw it, have seen at Tropicana or Flamingo or even Caesars. Some of these older properties that have made a lot of changes. 44 years, that's pretty good. The Hacienda opened up in 1956, was demolished in 1996. That made room for Mandalay Bay, so it made it 40 years. The original Aladdin opened in 1962, was imploded in 98, 36 years. They didn't get around to knocking over the El Rancho until 2000, but it had basically been empty for quite a number of years. It lasted, I guess, about 40 some odd years in one form or another. I put down the Castaways. That was the old showboat down on Boulder Highway, so that doesn't really even apply to our metric, but just for giggles, it opened up in 54. It was finally imploded in 06, but again, I think it had been closed for several years prior to that, so in its 40s. The Bourbon Street Casino made it from 1980 to 2006, so 26 years. That was a smaller property on East Flamingo. The Boardwalk, that of Scary Clown and non-functioning roller coaster, opened in 1966, was knocked over in 2006 to help make room for City Center. So about 40 years it lasted. The Desert Inn was around for a long time. From about 1950 until the early 2000s. It was sort of slowly demolished to make room initially for the Wynn and then for Encore. The last of it didn't get knocked over until like 2007, but most of it was gone a few years earlier than that. So it lasted about 50 years with some renovations. The Stardust opening in 1958. Again, there was very little left of the original Stardust by the time it was imploded in 2007, 49 years. You might keep these numbers in the back of your mind. And the New Frontier, which, like I said, started out as like the last frontier or just the frontier, all of those things. It finally bit the dust in 2007 as well. Obviously, this show's going to go over 15 minutes, so if you had set your oven, you may need to take a break, hit the pause button, and we'll get back to it. So, it seems like the average age at which a hotel is finally deemed to be old and perhaps worthy of either major renovations or possible destruction is in its 30s and 40s. So where are we going to be in 2032? Bally's opened up back in 1973, as did the Harrah's. They both had different names back then. Harrah's was Holiday Inn, Bally's was MGM Grand, but they've been around for quite a while. In 2032, they will be 59 years old. There aren't any 59-year-old casinos on the Las Vegas Strip, with the exception of the Flamingo and and the Tropicana. There's nothing left of the original Flamingo. There's a little part of the Tropicana casino that's still much as it was originally, but that's about it. But yeah, those two properties will be pretty old in 10 years. Or Bally's, or as I call it, Horseshoe. Late 70s, we saw that Casino Royale opened up as the Nob Hill Casino. It'll probably still be around. I mean, it's just a little low-flung motel and small, cheap casino. They'll probably keep it around. Who knows? The Cromwell opened up also in the late 70s as Barbary Coast, and then morphed into Bill's and then into Cromwell. It's interesting. Most of the changes we've actually seen on the Las Vegas Strip in recent years have been sort of repurposing. We saw that with Sahara into SLS and then back to Sahara. We saw it at Link, repurposing the old Imperial Palace. We saw it at Cromwell. We saw it at Park MGM. It's a good thing, I think, that we're taking existing structures and we're repurposing them instead of always knocking things over. Yeah, maybe you can't do that with a pyramid. I don't know. I forgot to mention the Imperial Palace began life back in the late 50s. It started out as the Flamingo Capri, didn't become Imperial Palace till the 70s. It's obviously still around. It's obviously had a lot of changes made to it. It'll obviously be very old by the year 2032. As I mentioned, the 80s, or maybe I mentioned the 80s, were a very empty time for growth and change on the Las Vegas Strip. Not much of anything until 1989 with the opening of the Mirage. In 2032, the Mirage will be 43 years old. Pretty old. A year later, we saw the opening of Excalibur in 1990. It'll be 42 years old in 10 years, if it's still there. 3 years later, we saw Luxor, Treasure Island. What else did we see? Oh, and MGM Grand, the second one, all opened. They'll be 39 years old if they're still standing in 10 years. 1996, it's already been basically 26 years. They'll be 36 years old, that being the Stratosphere, or the Strat, and what is now Park MGM and what began life as the Monte Carlo, 36 years old. 2032, New York will be 35 years old. Bellagio, 34 years old. Mandalay Bay, Paris, and Venetian, 33 years old. Feeling old yet? Wondering what's going to be there yet? 2000, so 32 years old, Planet Hollywood. 2000, we didn't see another property. Let me double check this. Yeah, the Wynn opened up in 2005. It'll be 27 years old. Palazzo 2 years later, 25. Encore a year later, 24. For those of you who can't do the math, City Center will be 23 years old. Here's one that's kind of hard to swallow. In 10 years, in 2032, Cosmopolitan will be 22 years old. Now, some of those properties are still relatively young, but you'll notice on the high end of those properties, they're in their 40s and their late 30s. Will there be a Mirage in 2032? Or will it be the Hard Rock Hotel and Casino at the Mirage? Interesting thought. When Treasure Island opened, it was Treasure Island at the Mirage, I believe. I think that's why they had the little tram to create the illusion that it was one big complex. Who knows? And then obviously we get to Excalibur, where there's speculation. Excalibur, 42 years old. Is it going to make it 10 more years? Odds are probably no better than 50-50 if you look at it. You look at the history that we looked at. Luxor, well, Maybe the pyramid really is structurally unsound. Maybe it at least has to come down. Treasure Island seems like a property that really has nothing particular going for it anymore. At some point, Phil Ruffin will die or sell. It might be a candidate for an implosion and a reimagined property of some more modern and more interesting. MGM Grand is huge. It is the flagship of the entire company. I suspect, like Caesars, it will be somewhat immune, but I have to think they will do some major changes to it in the next 10 years, if they can afford it. The economy allows it. We've seen a reboot of Park MGM. What about New York, New York, if we're not so keen on themed casinos? Is there a 35-year-old New York, New York? Who knows? The Stratosphere? It's passed through a lot of hands already in its first 25 years. It's obviously not a great location, even with that cool little downtown sign. Will it be around in 10 years? Will there be anything there? Maybe the tower will have to come down because it's not structurally sound. I'm not sure it ever was structurally sound, and I've gone up in it like a half a dozen times. What's going to come down if the new things are going to go up? If we're going to see anything like we saw in the 90s and the 2000s, they're going to have to be a lot of these properties are going to have to go away. Or perhaps they'll be repurposed. That would be nice. Food for thought, And that's kind of what I want you to speculate on. Please do speculate in the comments if I know we have some very thoughtful people that, believe it or not, sit through this show on a weekly basis and have some definite ideas about where Las Vegas is going. And clearly there's environmental issues with the availability of water and climate change and those sorts of things. And there's economic issues. And of course, there's just the natural development of people's preferences. Will Las Vegas ever recover the convention business that it has lost through COVID? Will the preferences of people to come to Las Vegas as a major destination continue to be as strong as they have been? It's been very strong this year, but a lot of people are trying to come back that weren't able to come last year. So will that sustain itself? Will there be an economic downturn that does to the 2020s what it did to the 2010s? Hopefully not. It's just a lot to think about. And it makes you wonder whether the idea of knocking over Excalibur and Luxor is not so crazy. The idea of Tropicana going away is not so crazy. And neither are places like Treasure Island or, a much different MGM Grand. What do you think? What do you think Las Vegas is going to look like as we go into 2032? I've given some of my ideas, some of my thoughts on what might happen. We've got a hotel inventory that is aging. And it would not be surprising, based on the history, which we've talked about, to see a number of these properties go away in the next 10 years. As always with Las Vegas, it will be sad to see some of them go. But it'll also be exciting to see what takes their place. So, I'm going to wrap up today's show at almost the 25-minute mark. And I could have edited this down. Maybe I'll edit some of this down, but I probably won't. I think it's just sometimes worthwhile to just kind of ramble a little bit and just let it go. And we try to keep these shows a little shorter lately, but it's just a topic that I think really, for Vegas fanatics, is something worth thinking about. I think we've got a very, very interesting decade ahead. And at least for now, we're going to keep talking about it here on Vegas Weekly. Again, please like, comment, and subscribe. We appreciate it. Thanks to all of the loyal viewers who have been with us throughout the year and throughout the years. We'll be back on Wednesday with another Wacky Wednesday show. And we'll be back in a week, as more or less always, with another episode of Vegas Weekly. Until then, I hope that you have a great, lucky, and healthy week. We will see you all real soon. Bye-bye.